Hey guys, I'm Fowler, and today I'm going to show you really quickly how Jello and I wrote the song Work and Rule. Um, it's a fairly simple song compared to a lot of the stuff that I do. Still over 100 tracks, but a lot of it's automation and whatnot. So anyway, shouldn't take us too long to go through it. Uh, First off, the track starts out with kind of a weird sounding acoustic guitar. And this is something that I made 2 or 3 years ago when I first got Melodyne. That was, I think, on my last computer. And anyway, basically what I did was play a really simple guitar riff in open D and recorded it into Melodyne and used their polyphonic detection algorithm in order to detect each individual note of that riff, a lot of them which are sounding at the same time, and bend notes up and down, slide notes up and down, just basically drew in weird lines and weird shapes. And a lot of the sound comes from Melodyne doing its magic and the artifacts of that happening. You can hear especially right there. That's like, that was just a solid note, but I bent that down. And as I bent that down, it affected all the other notes that were being played at the same time. So you end up with this weird and interesting kind of sounds like it's half backwards, but not really, guitar part. Here I just put it up an octave. That's basically, I just took this render and put up an octave to add kind of some more shine to contrast what came in. So for drums, we've got that's what's providing most of the low end oomph, which came from a BT, I believe that's from a BT loop library. This blingin' one was a loop that I made. I have quite well organized folders with drum samples, drum loops, synth patches, synth renders, all kinds of stuff that some days if I'm not feeling super creative in the songwriting sense, I'll just spend the entire day making drum loops. So this was one of the many glitchy kind of IDM beats that I made. I think I used a Reactor, something I bought for Reactor, to mangle a bunch of different drum sounds together and create this sort of thing. So basically layer Abbey Road's 60s drummer, which is giving it kind of that organic top end sound with the cymbals and whatnot. And then the last real element during this part is this Reese sound, which I made in Massive. Nothing too crazy here, just a typical detuned Reese. This frequency shift insert works quite well for giving it that Reese sound, phase modulation, Luna oscillator, Luna wavetable. It's not groundbreaking stuff, but what's happening in the mixer is what's really giving this sound the unique feel. So if we solo that, if I turn off all these effects and listen to it, it's kind of cool, but like not really that cool. First thing was Homicide, so that gave it more edge. I'm just using two bands. Most of the sounds come from this lower band, but then when it when the filter opens up, it starts to grab this distortion. Then that's going through a Vocodex, which is kind of subtle because I've got the mix knob kind of 25% wet, so it's mostly dry. But if I turn that all the way up, you can hear that's kind of the character that's adding in. Then that's going into Maximus, which is really squeezing the crap out of it. Okay, that goes into this notch filter and high pass. That's giving it that kind of comb filter sound. Some delay and reverb, and then this last EQ was just a gain stage by the looks of things. Okay, so that's the resound. It's pretty straightforward. I think it complements the acoustic guitar in kind of a weird way. You don't really hear too many songs with an acoustic guitar and a Reese sound. Okay, so this section is kind of the build up to the drop. This is called Super Saw, but it's really not. It used to be a Super Saw sound. I changed it to this lead sound. That's going through some reverb, and I do this a lot. I'll have something pretty wet, and it'll dry right out, leading up to the drop. Okay, so now we're at the drop. Let's hear that. So right off the bat, we start with a dog bark, which is, you can really hear that here. Kind of lo-fi. Now, 808 and kicks. So this is what we got for the 808 and kicks. The 808 is from 808 Warfare from Modern Producers, I believe. They make that product. It's pretty good. It has a few. It has. Oh, I guess it's not going to show me. 808. There we go. Yeah, it's got quite a few different sounds, different sounding sub layers. I always turn the release all the way down so I can, well, not all the way down because it would click, but like pretty tight so that I can control when that sample starts and stops. I also had to tune this up half of a semitone to get it in tune with the song for whatever reason. That's just what sounded right to me. So what I did here, and oh, this is how I do my sidechaining, by the way. So you can see anything I want to sidechain, I just create this one volume automation clip, and then I link all of the volume faders to that one clip and put it wherever I want it to sidechain. An interesting thing here was because of FL's automation smoothing technique, it takes a bit of time to go. It doesn't instantaneously move the volume slider down to this point. It kind of fades it down or smooths it down. I wanted it to be down by the time this 808 kick happened because I wanted all of the thump to be gone and replaced with these two kick sounds. So I just shifted it over just a tiny bit, and that would allow for the volume fader to kind of, fade down to that spot by the time the kick hits. Okay, so that's a kick. Some snares and claps and whatnot. Nothing too crazy. Pre-shifted that over a little bit just to give it kind of a bit of a reverse tail or whatever you want to call it leading into the snare. Now, the main plucky sound is kind of funny what it actually is. Where are you? There you are. Okay, so this is a free plugin. It's a tar, I guess, an Indian instrument. Now this is heavily affected, as you can see here. Let's turn all the effects off and listen to it, and it's pretty funny. So that's nothing too crazy. It's pretty, I don't know, meh. So the first thing I did was put it through this lo-fi plugin to reduce the sample rate. So that gives it a little more crushed sound, kind of a distorted sound. Rolled off the top and bottom because I've faded it up earlier. So I just used this as a kind of a low pass fade type thing. Valhalla room with a large pre-delay, so it's kind of acting as a delay, but really it just sounds like you're in a big room. Putting that, this is where that sound really comes in, is because I use this. This actually was a plugin that I used to use a lot in Sonar. which is actually what I'm using to record the audio right now. I used to use Sonar back in the day, and this was a stock plugin for vocals, but I use it on everything. I'm using the saturator or the saturation effect here to distort it and add some harmonics. I'm using this compressor really in order to pull the room sound up. So I wanted that room sound to duck when the pluck hit, but then because of that pre-delay and the compressor, it sucks it right up after the pluck happens. And then dotted eighth note delay on top of kind of the 3/4 timing. That's what's at that. They kind of it sounds interesting because you're mixing a 3/4 time with a dotted eighth note. What else is happening? Some more reverb. I do this a lot. I have a fruity balance, which is really just panning and volume. It's like a gain stage. I never use the panning. I only ever use the gain. But I use that because I'll have elements that are messy or delayed or reverbed, and I want them to end at certain spots. So this is the automation for that. If we go back to it, it's just an automated mute. That's all I'm doing. I know there's a billion different ways of doing that. That's just how I've always done it, and that's probably how I'll always do it because it works perfect. That's how I get a lot of my tracks to have tight elements that are still messy. They're super messy, but the tails get cut off and everything sounds tight at certain spots. Okay, what else? What other interesting things are happening here? Okay. So that sounds like somebody saying ooh. Where is that? That's kind of, there's an interesting story behind that. So this guy, it's you'll laugh when you see what it actually is. So let's make unique. This is a tuned up and stretched out version of the very overused trap bark, I guess it's called. But if you stretch it way out and tune it way up, it sounds way different, and that's cool. I love kind of, fooling people like that. I try to use a lot of overused samples, but I use them in new ways that if I told you, you wouldn't really, oh, that's what that sample is. I actually did that again here in kind of the second part of the first half of the drop. This one is again, oops. Yeah, right here. That's it's just ring modulated. But that's another kind of overused trap sample. Acoustic guitar has been brought back in at this point, delayed. Okay, now this is kind of the second half of the drop, the B section, I guess you could call it. The biggest thing that's changed is these two synths, which are kind of like the vocally synths. This track actually used to be called Interlude, that's why it's like that. This is one of a lot of patches that I've made in Serum, as you do. This is pretty basic, just, using a macro to control the wave table position, FM, sending it through a low pass filter, sending it through a high pass filter to get that real vocally sound, distorting it, OTT compression, multiband compression, and a little bit of reverb. And that's what you get from that layer. Now this layer is kind of the one that really adds the vocally sound, which is this wicked FM synth Nemesis, which has a bunch of different FM algorithms. it's not just your straightforward frequency modulation. They have quite a few variations on that, which all sound quite different from each other. But yeah, that sounds like. Now, a lot of that sound is actually coming from the effects. If you see here, let's turn those effects off and see what it sounds like. So that sounds pretty meh. So first, I think this adds a lot. This the fruity effector, using the vocal kind of formant type filter, then sending it through, picking up quite a bit of distortion from this decapitator plugin. OTT brings out the crunchiness in the top end. Just a high pass so it doesn't get in the way of the sub. Vocodex, subtle layer, and some reverb. So that's how that sound was made. All right, moving forward. Just here. I really like this electric piano, actually. I should use it more. It sounds good. Anyway, that just adds a layer of like drama. Another cool thing that I'm doing here is that we really played around with like the 3/4, 4/4 timing. You can see how like this kind of goes 1 2 3 1 2 3, like the triplet thing, but then in this small section right here, that's more like a 4/4 feel, and that kind of makes it feel like it grinds to a stop. Maybe not a stop, but it feels like it slows down just for those 2 bars. Alright, so breakdown. Bringing the melody back in right here. Also going to elaborate on the melody a little bit as we change up the chords. 808 changes up as well. Filter opens up. A little bit of Alicia's keys in there. An 80s style bass that I made in Omnisphere. Just straightforward, couple oscillators, filter opening up. Okay, so a couple things different in the second drop. We've got this tremolo synth, which is Harmer. Really, just, you can see how careful I am. I'm not careful at all. I just click and click and click. The filter is kind of adding a character, but the real modulation just comes from a low-pass filter. You can see this mask makes it so the phaser doesn't affect the lower end, and it stays solid, but it does kind of phase in the top. You can see these light lines. That's like the phaser doing its thing. Okay, what else? Oh, new layer for the plucky thing. So if we mute the main pluck, and that's just, it's subtle. It's obviously subtle, but it just makes the second drop feel like it's gone somewhere. because the B part of the second drop's fairly similar to the first. We took out the hi-hats in the first section there to give it more of a chunky feel as it's leading towards the end of the song. And we end with a super time stretched acoustic guitar. I love time stretching stuff. That's like, when I first got into electronic music, I loved the sound of like granular synthesis and time stretched glitchy stuff. So a lot of my sound design is pretty much just straight up time stretching stuff and then resampling, time stretching it, putting it in Harmor, turning the speed knob down in Harmor so it's time stretching it, just like basically forcing the digital plugins past the point where they sound natural. But anyway, that's how Josh and I made Work and Rule. So I hope you learned some.